Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Apex Racing TV, and welcome back to the 2024 Radical Americas Championship. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the commentary booth tonight is Charles Bichelle, and in the virtual production hall we have our old friend Lee Thompson. Tonight we head to Brands Hatch for the 10th round of the season. And now, Charles, this track is a blast, both in sim and in real life. It's short, but it packs a whole lot of fun and challenge and not a whole lot of space. It's a last track of its kind from this season as well. So what do you expect out of these drivers tonight?
Yeah, this is such a fun track. This is my favorite British track of all of them. And it's just, it is very reminiscent of a faster version of maybe Road Atlanta. Lots of elevation changes, some high-speed cornering. You know, you just have to get this track right to be successful, and there's enough challenge here that it will challenge any racer, and I just love driving it. I'm not great at it, but I still love driving it anyway, and so I'm looking forward to a great event tonight.
Oh, it is going to be a great event indeed. Of course, those unfamiliar with either this series or the Radical European Championship, was also airs occasionally on Sundays here on Apex Racing TV. We'll briefly remind you all about the format. So we have a single car qualifying session, which is set to get underway in about 4-ish minutes time. And then that sets the grid for a 15-minute sprint, followed by a 45-minute long feature race to cap off the racing action from tonight. Now, this, of course, being the 10th round of this season, only 12 to this season's calendar, we're starting to think about championships and crowning some drivers as either a pro or an AM champion. So I think it's about high time that we take a look at the points with about 3 minutes left in this practice session, because the points battles have been incredibly fascinating so far this season. In the pro standings, Lucas Vieira, the flying Brazilian, as at the front, 221 points on the board. Young American Ryan Odo right behind in P2, 212 points on the board. It's really turned into a 2-horse race, as although Franco Sanchez turned it into a 3-horse race earlier on, he actually missed out on the last round of the championship at Phillip Island a handful of weeks ago, and so as a result, he's dropped back a little bit, and with only 99 points left on the board, there's pretty much only 5 drivers that have a chance of winning the championship. Really, only 2 are going to be in it to win it. I think we'll move on on to AM as well, because this season has been incredibly exciting with the AM category. But towards the end, Andy Vogel has started to pull away 193 points on the board. However, that fight right behind with Joel Jacqueline in second and Cedric Oyahan in third, those two drivers only separated by about 3 points, and right behind them as well, Charles Krasik and Adrian Fernandez locked steady in a close fight as well. Those two drivers go round out the top 5 in the AM standings. Both of those classes looking quite interesting. Andy Vogel seems to have it, I wouldn't say locked up, because that would be my public school math really showing early on into this broadcast. However, Vogel pretty confident and pretty comfortable in that AM championship. So I think our attention for the final 3 races of this season, Charles, is probably going to be focused on the pros.
I think so, and but there's still, I mean, the battle for the final 2 podium spots in AM is still pretty tight between 4 drivers. So, I think 15 points or so separating those 4 drivers. So, it'll be interesting to see who can kind of push forward and kind of lock in P2. But yeah, Andy Vogel's had a fantastic season. Really set himself up well to just kind of cruise on home for the championship. And yeah, that, I feel so bad for Sanchez missing that round last week, and it kind of give those other 2 guys a leg up for these final 2 races. But still, you never can tell. We've had incidents happen that's taken out lead cars, so it could change at the drop of a dime.
Yeah, we've seen a whole lot of twists and turns throughout this season, both the ones the drivers are negotiating on the wonderful racetracks that we've had from the season schedule, and just in terms of the way these races are. Phillip Island, a handful of weeks ago, that was insane. We'll leave it at that. Ryan Odo and Lucas Vieira came to blows in the early stages, but then they ended up coming back to finish 1 and 2, with Lucas Vieira running on a hope, a prayer, and fumes towards the end of that 45-minute long feature race. That was probably one of the most impressive drives, and if he ends up winning the championship from this season, he can very much chalk up the championship winning performance from this season to that incredible performance at Phillip Island for the 9th round of this 12-race calendar. So as this practice session is drawn to a close and we move on to the qualifying session, I'll briefly touch on some of the practice results. Not a whole lot of drivers running with us this evening, but as per usual, up towards the front, it was Vieira and Ryan Odo setting the 2 fastest times in the practice session, with Lucas Vieira actually having a bit of a leg up over Ryan Odo in P2. And actually, Lucas Vieira was much quicker than the drivers in the European Championship broadcast earlier on this afternoon here on Apex Racing TV. Early on this afternoon, evening, or morning, wherever you're watching this broadcast from tonight, today, or whenever. That's the best way I can describe it. Always have to cover your bases when it comes to the different time zones that may be tuning into this broadcast. But Vieira, 0.3 of a second in front of Ryan Odo. Vieira set a 1-minute 18.929. Odo was right behind in second at a 119.203. And they had a pretty okay gap between themselves and Franco Sanchez in third. But as these drivers get their tires warmed up for a 4-lap dash in this qualifying session with the track all to themselves, we're going to see once again these drivers trying to push this car to the absolute limit and also getting the tires lit up as quickly as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to get this nice outlap. You want to get a lot of heat in your tires, get them nice and grippy. My guess is that a lot of these drivers, especially the ones up toward the top of the championship standings, will just go out as we see Charles Krasik there with a slide coming through Sterling's, and that's one of the things you have to watch out for. These cars a little loose on the rear, and you get on these curbs, and you end up getting yourself into the barrier. But I think a lot of these drivers maybe will just put in a banker lap, just get a lap on the board in case something happens and they're not running overly well during the course of qualifying. But just get a lap on the board so that way they're starting relatively close to where they think they should, and then they'll settle in and try and really get a couple hot laps toward the end.
And at this point in time, these drivers starting to get some lap times on the board, starting to get their tires up to temperature as well. It's only going to be a few moments time until these drivers start setting some lap times on the board. Based off the practice results, you'd maybe try and give it to Lucas Vieira. However, as I pointed out, and as we've both pointed out throughout this season, these SR10s are an entirely different beast during the qualifying session, because these tires take about 3 to 4 laps to really get into a good operating window. Before then, you're really going to struggle, as we saw David Unger, the Australian, run wide on the exit of turn at number 7. But these drivers just going to try and make sure they can complete a clean lap. That's a big thing around this racetrack as well. Woo, big slide heading through turn number 9 at the end of this lap. But these drivers just need to get a quick time, but they need to get a clean time as well. To finish first you have to finish, and to put in a good qualifying result, you need a time that's going to count. Lots of these drivers setting some qualifying times already. It's Sanchez at the front 4 now. Vieira slipping his way up into 4th, which, you know, honestly, maybe a little bit of trickery there, maybe trying to dedicate a bit more time towards weaving around this racetrack and building a little bit of tire temperature, so that result may be deceiving, it may not, who knows. Our Apex Racing TV colleague, Jared Gregory, is currently 5th in this qualifying session, 1.5 seconds off of our current provisional pole sitter, that being Franco Sanchez. Currently 7 cars to set a qualifying time at the moment, and Adrian Fernandez is leading the top of the AM drivers currently. We're following Luis Pires at the moment in the 963 car. He is currently the slowest qualifier at the moment, but I give credit where credit's due to Luis. In fact, he's been able to get through these races fairly clean. I've got some experience running in Radical Officials in the past, and I'll tell you what, just keeping this car on the racetrack, especially at a track like this with so many challenging corners and no room for error at all, is very impressive. But as this qualifying session develops, Charles, what do you take from the first few times we've had so far? Do you take anything from them?
Well, I'm looking at timing and scoring, and as we see Pires getting off track there. There's Odo, and now I was just about to say, I was looking at him. That was he's on his third lap. His first 2 laps were invalidated for off tracks, so it was he really needed to get a time on the board and managed to do so. But as you can see, it's almost a full second off of Vieira. Vieira just set a blistering lap, 1:19.3 to Sanchez with over a half second back. Odo almost a full second back. So it really needs to, the times themselves doesn't necessarily matter, because obviously once we get into the race itself, you get to battle those cars on the track. So, but the starting position is important, especially in groups where you have, I guess maybe, how we say, mixed experience levels. Accidents happen, and you don't want to get, kind of mired in the back and get involved in somebody else's wreck. So it's important, if you're a fast car, you want to be up near the front to start the race. But once again, these guys have been battling all season long. It's not really a big surprise as we see, Odo back to P2, Richard with a good lap that puts himself in P3, and now Sanchez pops that. So starting to see this battle shaping up in the final couple minutes of qualifying.
And Charles, that's a very good point that you bring up, especially around a racetrack like this, where in the European Championship broadcast earlier on, not a whole lot of overtaking opportunities at this field's disposal. So at this point in time, these drivers really trying to pay a whole lot of attention to their qualifying results. Of course, it's the only qualifying session that we have as the starting grid for the feature races set by the finishing order from the sprint. So it's very important to have a good start here when you only have 15 minutes to try and get the job done. But Lucas Vieira currently at the provisional pole at a 1:19.027. Ryan Odo running in second, nearly a half a second off. Franco Sanchez very close to Odo, it must be said, only a few thousandths of a second separating those 2 cars in P2 and P3 at the moment. Ryland Richard in 4th, and Eric Harmon now in 5th, displacing John Benlid, who, if I had stumbled across my words a little bit quicker, I think Benlid may have said that Ben Lid was in 5th. He's now down to 6th with that time from Harmon. He must feel very confident as he's now come back to the pits, ending his qualifying session. Adrian Fernandez has as well, as Sanchez jumps his way up into 2nd. Fernandez and Vocal battling for the AM pole position at the moment, but Sanchez setting in a very good time. Vieira, meanwhile, improving yet again, going to 1 minute 18.926. I mentioned this earlier on, and I'll mention it again for prosperity's sakes. Vieira setting a time like that is extremely impressive, especially considering the cramped time that these drivers have to try and set a time like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to be 4/10 up on the guys that you've been battling for the championship all season long is it's a pretty nice statement to make going into the start of this race. So, still, a couple minutes left. These guys may have another lap. Let's see. I think the top 3 have basically finished theirs, so there's not going to be any change to the top 3. Benlett, I believe, has now completed his 4. Richard as well. So the only one that we have still left to finish up is Andy Vocal. He's still running his 3rd lap. So there may be a potential. He's already tops of the AM class, but maybe he can move up a couple more spots and put some cars between him and Fernandez in 9th overall.
Yeah, definitely want to have a big cushion for these races. We've seen some interclass mingling between the pros and the AMs so far this season. I'm sure here at Brands Hatch is going to be no exception. Currently 12 drivers setting qualifying times at the moment, with this qualifying session slowly grounding down to a halt, coming up to the 9-minute mark in this 10-minute long qualifying session. And I believe the only drivers left out on the racetrack is this man, Andy Vocal, looking to try and improve on the lap time he has thus far. Will he move up a spot in front of Harmon and maybe Rylan Richard, or is he going to remain in P7? He crossed the line, and I don't believe there was an improvement from Andy Vocal. The driver in the number 34 car has been incredibly impressive thus far, and he's off the back of, in my view, one of the most impressive performances from this season. He was leading for a decent chunk of the Phillip Island race and was running in a very good podium spot throughout a decent chunk of it as well. I don't remember exactly where he finished when everything was said and done, but Vocal definitely carrying a whole lot of momentum coming into the final few races of this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was his fastest lap of qualifying. It just didn't move him up any positions on the board. So he marginally better. He's 300ths off behind Harmon in P6 overall and P6 in the pros. So this is his last flying lap. So we'll see if he can manage to, nope, time's up. So did not manage to complete that last lap. And so he is stuck in P7, but on pole for the AM class.
And so he is going to snag the pole in the AM category, but he's not going to snag the pole overall. The man who did that was Lucas Vieira, the 1 minute 18.926. Incredible stuff from the Brazilian. He's going to be joined on the front row by a fellow South American, that being Franco Sanchez. Ryan Odo going to be starting this race in 3rd. John Benlid in 4th. Rylan Richard in 5th. Eric Harmon in 6th. Andy Vocal in 7th. David Unger, the Australian, in P8. Adrian Fernandez in 9th. Charles Krasik rounding out your top 10 with Jared Gregory and Luis Pyres rounding out the 12-car starting grid. The 12 cars that set a qualifying time. And unlike what you may see with some other leagues, either on Apex Racing TV or in iRacing as a whole, we've got standing starts. It reflects what we have in the official series, which is also broadcasted here on Apex Racing TV. But it still throws in another curveball towards these drivers. They have to worry about these standing starts on ice-cold tires that run into turn number 1, especially at a track like this where you have to get on the brakes and get woed up heading into that corner so early on after getting the race underway. That is a huge factor. You're going downhill as well. Not a whole lot of grip in the world. We saw some drivers, well, I saw some drivers in the European Championship broadcast earlier on this afternoon here on Apex Racing TV. It was Andreas Friedrich, the driver, that ended up performing like a half spin off the line. They had a torrid start, and hopefully these drivers will not try and repeat that. Just waiting for, I believe, one more car to line up on the starting grid, that being Franco Sanchez. A little bit of mind games, possibly. We're not too sure. He's the only car that's not lined up on the starting grid. Hopefully he doesn't have some sort of technical issue, which is forcing him to be a little bit tardy to the party. There we go. There is Franco Sanchez, ready to get things underway from the third to last race meeting here from the 2024 Radical Americas Championship. And as Franco Sanchez flashes his lights, the lights go out and the drivers are on their way. Pretty good start from our pole sitter Vieri. He's going to be leading them off into turn number 1. Franco Sanchez slotting behind in P2 with Ryan Odo rounding at your podium for the moment. Look at Odo trying to get a move done on Franco Sanchez. He doesn't like the fact that Sanchez beat him in qualifying and he wants to fight. Ryan Odo said a few weeks ago at the end of that Phillip Island race that he needs to go out for wins and he needs to go out for all-out glory towards the end of this season. So Ryan Odo trying to do that at the moment. Meanwhile, a superb start for our Apex Racing TV colleague J.R. Gregory, already slipping his way up inside of the top 10. But as Ryan Odo flashes his headlights, is Lucas Vieira leading at Odo right now in P2. Sanchez running at your podium in third with a whole lot battling up and down the field, and the entire car pack that we have in this race still separated by 6.5 seconds.
Yes, very, very good start by everybody. I think loser is Krasik. Did not get the greatest starts, fell to the back. We did get Tyler Vickery on the grid. Ooh, as we see a car off, and that might have been Vickery. Just mentioned, I maybe just cursed him there, but he did not take part in qualifying, but he did come out for the race. And so he's another one of those guys that him and Pires, not the most experienced drivers out on the grid, but they're out there competing week in and week out. So I always love to just kind of see how they progress during the course of the race. As we still have that battle up front, the gap between Vieira and Odo is about 3.5 tenths. Sanchez is kind of lurking behind, and then nice side-by-side battle there with Richard and Biddleman.
Yeah, and Andy Volkel got a fantastic view of that as they went side by side through the first 2 corners of the second lap of the race. But now Andy Volkel is trying to seize the opportunity down the inside, heading into turn number 4. Will it be a successful move from Andy Volkel, or is John Benlid going to hold off the challenge? Looks like Benlid is going to hold off Volkel on that inside line. Wasn't able to get a good enough run going onto this back straightaway. However, he tucked into the draft and was nearly thinking about going for a move heading into turn number 5. That would have been some bold and audacious stuff from the driver of the number 34 car. Meanwhile, the second place runner in the AM category, that is Adrian Fernandez. We're following him right now. He's right behind Eric Harmon and has a pretty significant gap between himself and J.R. Gregory right behind, who's running in third in the AM category as it stands at the moment. Already some movers and shakers thus far in this race. Tyler Vickery up 3 spots from where he started. Ryan Odo up 1 along with Ryland Richard and Andy Volkel. Adrian Fernandez up 1 spot and J.R. Gregory up 2, with some drivers dropping down the running order, mainly David Unger down 3 spots from where he started in this race. Not ideal for the Aussie at all, but as this field begins the third lap of the race, it's still Vieira, Odo, and Sanchez running in the podium spots for now, and they're starting to pull away from Ryland Richard right behind in 4th. I'm curious if this is going to be a 3-car fight between now and the checkered flag.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that it would be. It's been kind of that way for most of the season. These guys have just done battle week in and week out, so no surprise they've kind of stretched the gap out now over Richard, who's doing a great job, is in 4th place. He's up a position over Bindlin. Volkel's continuing to stamp his name on that AM championship, running in 6th overall. And he's got a nice 2.5 gap over his closest competitor, Fernandez, in 8th.
At this point in time, lots of drivers settling into a groove. However, we have seen some incidents thus far. This is Tyler Vickery in the number 24 car. We're taking a look at him heading through the mid-sector of this lap, about to head his way through turn number 7 now, and got caught in the dirty air, ran wide coming through the corner, took a brief trip into the grass, very close to hitting that gravel trap, and the gravel traps in iRacing, especially since they reworked the physics about a year ago at this point, that gravel trap is basically just like running straight into a brick wall. David Unger, meanwhile, had a big slide heading through turn at number 3. Very lucky to keep that car going in a straight line. Look at Tyler Vickery taking some avoiding action to overtake Unger. Unger with a lockup trying to keep that car going in a straight line. His tires are going to more resemble rectangles than anything else between now and the end of this race, coming up in over 10 minutes time. But as it stands currently, the field's still settling into a groove. David Unger and Vickery battling, as Unger's got to move back past Vickery to slip his way up into the final top 10 spot. But this race settling into a groove fairly early on. These drivers trying to see the championship, they're trying to see the bigger picture, and they're starting to feel a bit calm. And we've seen some pretty hectic races in these sprints so far this season, Charles. So I think maybe with the final 3, these drivers are like, hey, let's just keep it calm and keep it clean, because if we end up crashing in this race, we're going to really hurt ourselves in the future later on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a tough hill to climb. Obviously, in that 45-minute race, you have plenty of time to make moves to get past, but this is not a track that you make lots and lots of passes on, lots of overtakes. You get a good slipstream, and you can make a pass maybe once, one car per lap, which obviously, even if you start in the back, you can clear a lot. But the further up the train you get, the harder it is to make those moves. So, it behooves, the drivers to try and get a very good finishing position here in this sprint race. Don't try and overdo things and make some maybe some poor decisions to try and get a position here when you can just keep yourself under control and try and do something a little more work in that feature where there's more points.
Yeah, that's a big thing. These drivers really need to pace themselves, and considering the dramatic races we've had so far this season, drivers haven't really been able to do that. They've been caught up in the red mist a whole lot this season. Even drivers not running with any red on their paint scheme, and any drivers running in the AM category with a red ticker next to their name with the wonderful SDK graphics that we have on Apex Racing TV. But they've been caught up in the red mist a whole lot, and we may see that play a role in how things go in both the rest of this sprint race and the 45-minute feature to come. Lots of different storylines and lots of different ways that these drivers will attack both of these races. Of course, the feature drivers we usually think that the drivers pace themselves a little bit more, but I've occasionally seen more aggression in the feature, especially at the start, than we usually see in the entirety of the 15-minute long sprint race. Of course, we have some pit stops to worry about with that as well. We'll touch on that in the not too distant future once this first race of the evening comes to a close and we get the 5 minutes of warm-up, the calm before the storm, so to speak, before things really start to ramp up. We're following John Benlid, currently running 5th, effectively running in no man's land as a car farther up the road. That's Ryland Richard. He is 5.8 seconds off of the leader, Lucas Vieira, and he has a pretty significant gap between himself and this man, John Benlid. So he's going to remain in P4 unless some sort of major drama happens, which, knowing my luck, I just said it, so it's probably going to happen. I may have just pulled off one of the worst commentators' jinxes in my life. John Benlid still putting his nose to the grindstone and trying to extend that gap to himself and Andy Vogel. Vogel, meanwhile, has the likes of Harmon and Fernandez behind. Harmon is Vogel's best friend and Fernandez's arch rival. Just based off how this race is going currently, Fernandez maybe getting a bit impatient, if I can spit my words out here, behind the back of Eric Harmon's 617 car. We could see Fernandez go for the move in the not-too-distant future because I think he has a very fast race car. He's confident in his chances, and I think if he can displace Harmon, he may have a very good shot of snagging the AM victory from the sprint.
Yeah, absolutely. He was 4/10 faster than Harmon last lap, so definitely looks like he may have a speed advantage over Harmon. So let's see if he tries to, capitalize on that, maybe down this straight here. And from Surtees to Pilgrim's Drop, and see if he can muster up a chance to make a move to the inside, try and take that inside line going through the next corner. Nope, no such luck. He's going to hang back there. So he's just managing to bide his time and wait for a chance to make that overtake.
Yeah, it's really all about biding your time. You don't want to go for a bonsai move because it's just going to end in absolute disaster. So these drivers just pacing themselves a little bit, trying to figure out when to pick your fights is a big thing that we've seen. And that's part of the reason why the drivers up at the top of the point standings have been able to be there, is just consistency. That's a big thing when it comes to the series, especially considering that there's only 12 races from this season. Well, 24 if you count both the sprint and the feature, but still 12 race meetings. and there's pretty significant time between them. We're off the back of what we would like to call the summer break, about a month since the last race of the season at Phillip Island, and we still have 3 weeks between this race and the next one at Spa for the second to last round of this Radical Americas Championship. So if you set yourself up poorly and have a tough go of things at a certain race, you have a whole lot of time to stew in it, and that's what hurts some of these drivers. Adrian Fernandez, though, he is feeling confident. You can see him pulling at the steering wheel, heading through turn number 3, still about a quarter of a second off the back of Harmon, who's only about a quarter of a second off of Andy Vogel in P6. These 3 cars are merging into each other at this point as the whole field starts to fade away. They're either pulling in front or they're starting to drop it back. These 3 are only focused on each other. At this point in time, you can't really blame 2 of them. Vogel, he has championship aspirations in his sights. Harmon, meanwhile, he's had an up and down season. I don't believe has taken a victory. If he has, it's been a very long time since he has. So I think Eric Harmon looking to have a strong end to this season. And Fernandez as well. He's a somewhat younger guy, and he's looking to try and impress in this Series AM driver. If he was a bit more consistent, he probably would have been in that championship fight with Vogel. Those 2 have been the class of the AM category and the creme de la creme, so to speak, over the past few race meetings. But as it stands currently, it's Vogel, Harmon, and Fernandez still quite close, with Vieira, Odo, and Sanchez still running P1, P2, and P3 overall.
Yeah, Harmon's done a great job. He's managed to close that gap up to Vogel, running in P6, and was kind of watching him as we were riding on board with Fernandez. He was fighting the steering wheel a little bit there. That the rear of that car just wanted to step out as he was coming through Druids and Graham Hill Bend. And just wanted to step out, and he's having to kind of do some course corrections during the middle of the corners. So he's done a great job, just kind of handle the car and still pick up time on Vogel in front.
These drivers putting on some very strong showing. May not be the most flamboyant showing. They may not be going for some ridiculous moves, having some fantastic saves, but just keeping your nose to the grindstone is a huge deal in these races. Tyler Vickery has dropped out. He's currently 2 laps down. I'm not sure if there's some sort of incident to knock him out of this race and reduce our field size from 13 to 12. And as Krasik and Gregory just went side by side, hopefully you can find a replay to see if there's any sort of on-track drama that led to Tyler Vickery towing back to pit lane and being 2 laps down in this first race of the evening. Franco Sanchez, who we're following now, still running in 3rd, dropping back from the back of Ryan Odo's car, who's actually dropped back from Lucas Vieira a little bit farther up the road. However, Sanchez, unless he loses about 5 seconds between now and the end of this race, which is coming up in probably about 1 to 2 laps time, Sanchez would be fairly locked stead for a final podium position from this first race of the evening. John Bentley a little bit farther back. He's running in 5th, and he's slowly getting chased down by Vogel, Harmon, and Fernandez behind. That gap has diminished as of late. I'm curious whether or not John Bentley is just struggling for pace. Maybe he overcooked his tires in the opening stages, and now he is feeling the burn, literally and figuratively, as Fernandez and Harmon are still pretty close, a little bit farther in the back. I don't know about you, Charles, but I have a strange inclination that this is not going to be a 4-car fight. I think it's more so going to be 2-on-2 with Bentley and Vogel and Harmon and Fernandez battling rather than all 4 just trading blows.
I think you're probably right. I think they want to get into interclass battles. They just want to fight their competitors in their class. Hopefully they can work that all out in the last couple of laps here. We don't come to any argy-bargy during the course of this last couple of laps here in the race.
I like the use of RG-barging, and honestly, when it comes to these Radical SR10 races, we've seen a whole lot of RG-barginess. RG-bargy action, I'm not really sure how exactly to address it, but nevertheless, Adrian Fernandez may be doing a little bit of RG-bargy action in the not-too-distant future to find his way past Eric Harmon. Those 2 cars still covered by about 3 tenths of a second, my apologies. Meanwhile, it's Vocal and Benlid still pretty close, a little bit more spread apart, about half a second between those two. But this is looking like it's going to be a good finish. I believe, just based off where Vieira is on track currently, I believe we're going to have one more lap to go from this race coming to the white flag now. So Lucas Vieira going to round his way around turn number 9 for the second to last time in this sprint race on course for a dominant victory to kick off the final trifecta of race meetings. And these are the results that Vieira was really looking for coming in to these last few races. Odo was a little bit of rally action on the outskirts of turn number 1, hitting that gravel trap and losing a little bit of time. Odo, he's going to be pushing it towards the end of this season. We're going to see maybe those two drivers possibly come to blows. I mean, they had a little bit of drama at the opening laps of the feature race a couple of weeks ago here on Apex Racing TV. So we could see deja vu between those two drivers yet again, and maybe the likes of Franco Sanchez or even Rylan Richard could end up winning this race when everything is said and done. But on this white flag lap, Fernandez has lost touch with Harmon. I believe he's had some sort of mistake as he's lost about 1 second in the past few moments. Not sure what happened to the American, who I believe is from Florida, but nevertheless, he is running in 8th, and I don't believe he'll be able to get to the back of Harmon and even think about taking the win in the AM category when everything is said and done. Vocal looking to hang on there, but meanwhile, Lucas Vieira, well farther up the road, is going to round his way around the final corner for the final time in this sprint race, and he is going to take the checkered flag in first. Lucas Vieira flashing the headlights and weaving his way around that start-finish straightaway. He wins it over Ryan Odo in P2 and Franco Sanchez in 3rd. There's 99 points left on the board for these drivers, and Vieira is trying to have them all for himself. Meanwhile, Andy Vocal going to be finishing this race, the top running AM driver. A little bit farther up the road was Benlid, so we didn't really see the fight that we were probably expecting involving the likes of Benlid, Vocal, Harmon, and Fernandez. However, they were still close when everything was said and done, with only 7 tenths of a second between Andy Vocal and Harmon after 15 minutes of racing action. So Charles, considering the trickiness of this track, I went into the European broadcast earlier on today expecting that we're going to see some chaos, and that we didn't really see it. And here with the Americas, we're just seeing a case of deja vu, with a lot of these drivers whittling away the laps and just keeping it clean overall.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was a pretty straightforward race. There was some close racing, but not necessarily battles on track once we got out of the start of the race. So now it's just going to see if Odo and Sanchez have anything for Vieira in this feature race. You know, obviously with carrying a little more fuel, it's going to kind of change the balance of the car. So maybe that helps these guys out, and they can keep those gaps a bit tighter, or they can get a good jump at the start of the race. Obviously, with that standing start involved, you miss, you wheel spin, or you don't get the car shifted into gear just right, and you could end up losing several positions, and it will be very difficult to make that up.
Yeah, one small little mistake could just snowball into a terrible series of events of these drivers trying to avoid mistakes and avoid incidents and avoid the barriers and runoff areas like the plague. We definitely saw that get put on full display during that first race. I think we'll take a look at the results when everything was said and done while we're in the midst of this warm-up session currently. In the end, it was the flying Brazilian of Lucas Vieira winning it. It was 2 seconds between himself and Ryan Odo. He ended up winning it when everything was said and done in the 171 car. Then Ryan Odo, as I said, finishes in P2. Franco Sanchez going to round out your podium in 3rd. Rylan Richard had a nondescript race in the Flying Eagle Motorsports car. He's going to end up in 4th. 9.9 seconds back of Vieira and about 5-ish seconds. My public school math skills playing its role once again. He was about 5 seconds in front of John Benlid when everything was said and done. Andy Vocal going to be finishing as the top finishing AM driver, P6 overall. Eric Harmon in 7th, Adrian Fernandez in 8th, David Ungar in 9th, Charles Krasik in 10th, J.R. Gregory in 11th, Luis Pires in 13th, and Luis Pires in 12th, and Tyler Vickery in 13th, 6 laps down. down after an incident earlier on in this race. I feel like I need to get my glasses prescription changed because I feel like I'm misreading numbers like it's going out of style. But nevertheless, I think while we're in the midst of this warm-up session with some drivers bracing themselves for what is going to be an interesting 45-minute long feature, we'll just say Andy Vogel briefly disconnected from the session. I was just about to talk about the upcoming schedule here on Apex Racing TV. He has rejoined, so we are good to go on that front. That was going to be a whole lot of drama, but with that taken care of, we'll probably talk about the upcoming broadcasting schedule here on Apex Racing TV, because the action is pretty much non-stop. Of course, we had the Radical Americas and Radical European Championship broadcast here today. Completing Super Sunday here on Apex Racing TV is the Racing Unleashed GT3 series. You can catch that on Sundays with Matthew Duffin on the call live from the Apex Racing TV studios in the UK. If you're in the mood for some multi-class sports car racing action, though, we have got you covered this upcoming week with the opening race of Season 11 of the Rickmatech World Challenge, featuring LMP2s, GTPs, and GT3s as well. That's going to be tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Not sure how that would work out with the West Coast. I believe that'd be 4 p.m. California time. I'm not entirely sure. I may have to fact check myself on that. Actually, now I believe it'd be 5 p.m. California time. Anyways, Operation E Motorsports, the iRacing League, round number 3 of their season, is going to be at Mo Sports only 1 day later. That's going to be some pretty good action from up there in the north, followed by the Abruzzi ARL Endurance Series, round number 6 of the season, coming to you that day from Sebring, also live from the Apex Racing TV studios. Got a whole lot of action to talk about here on Apex Racing TV. Gives you more of a reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a thing. And actually, that notification bell may come in handy, because I think we may be able to get the August highlights reel from Apex Racing TV broadcast up in just a couple of days. I'm not sure when that will be going live, but it'll hopefully be live soon, and I believe some clips from this very series will possibly make their appearance in that video. But nevertheless, with a couple of moments left in this warm-up session, Charles, I want to ask you one quick question. There's a lot of stuff that these drivers need to keep their eyes on. Pitch strategy, these drivers may be being a little bit more aggressive, especially towards the start, and also that dastardly pit entry. What do you think, if you're one of these drivers, you would have your eyes on coming into this 45-minute long feature?
I think you nailed half of it. I think pit stop is going to be critical. I think the start is going to be critical. You got to get a good launch to get the race going. Maintain your position, maybe move up if somebody in front of you slips up. And then that pit stop, pit entry, we haven't talked about it obviously until now because we didn't have a pit stop in the first race. But pit entries, very, very difficult to get the car stopped in time. And then pit exit is just terrible because you're basically exiting out of the pits at the apex of the first corner. So you got to have your head on a swivel, as they say, and just be looking, both if you're on the track, on a lap, and if you're exiting, you got to be very careful with merging traffic. So those are the two critical areas that you're going to watch out for in this race.
I feel like most of the drivers are probably going to be keeping their ears and eyes on the traffic right behind, keeping their eyes on the rearview mirror for sure. But here's the starting grid from this 45-minute long feature. Vieira on the pole, Ryan Odo in P2, Sanchez in third, Rylan Richard in fourth, John Benlin in fifth, Andy Vogel in sixth, Eric Harmon in seventh, Adrian Fernandez in eighth, David Unger in ninth, Charles Krasik in 10th. My spectator in my room sneezing or coughing, not sure what that was. J.R. Gregory in 11th, Luis Pires in 12th, and Tyler Vickery going to round out the 13 cars that are going to grab the green in just a couple of moments' time. As I possibly may try and ask my roommate if they need some tissues after the very strange noise. Hopefully that wasn't picked up on the microphone here. Yeah, we switch our attention to 45 minutes. You did hear it, Charles? Alrighty.
I did not. No.
You did not hear it. Okay, self-reporting. Anyways, we're about to get the green flag out in this race. It's going to be a jumbled up start with some drivers not actually grabbing the green. We'll touch on that in a couple of moments' time, but the green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way, and as David Unger nearly has a half spin off the line, behind. Look at that, some rally action a little bit farther in the back. Who was that trying to do some rallycross action into turn number 1? That was John Benlid running into the grass as Vieira and Sanchez are battling hard at the front. Vieira and Sanchez were side by side heading into turn number 2 at the very beginning of this race. Vieira trying to hold on to that lead and also trying to extend that gap. Hopefully he was very happy about the gap he had towards the end of that 15-minute long sprint. He wants to have deja vu from then, considering that this race is 3 times longer. He's probably gonna hope for 3 times bigger of a gap, as all the commentators jinx. It's our buddy JR Gregory going for a spin. Be careful on the rejoin there, JR. That was very marginal. I think he nearly ran into the side of Tyler Vickery. Vickery may have to buy a lottery ticket when everything is said and done from this race, but still Vieira, Sanchez, and Odo running in the final podium positions. And look at Ryland Richard as well. He's broken away from John Benlid running in 5th, and he is keeping firm with the drivers running at the north end of this field. Ryland Richard had a quiet first race. I don't think he wants to go down without a quiet second race. I think he's going to go down swinging.
That's what it looks like. Yeah, he's hanging on to these top 3. Notice Odo's dropped down to 3rd, so either he had a bad start or Sanchez had a very, very good start. And Sanchez was able to take up that second position. Did see JR go around, and I will say that I did check Charles Krasik was disconnected due to packet loss, so internet failure of some type. So that's why he did not take the start of the race.
As cool of a thing iRacing may be, the small little technical issue are iRacers' worst nightmares, and of course it's our worst nightmare here on the broadcast. Thankfully, we have had no technical issues to speak. I shouldn't even have said anything, knowing my luck, I probably just jinxed it. It's tough stuff for Charles Krasik, though, because he was putting together a pretty good evening. However, it's all come to naught. Tyler Vickery's had an off-track moment, so he's in the pits currently. Maybe picked up some damage with the JR Gregory spin we saw coming through turn number 4. Possibly picked up some damage. I mean, we've seen some strange netcode related incidents so far this season, so it wouldn't entirely rule it out if Vickery picked up some sort of damage, even though there's a couple of feet of air separating those 2 race cars. Vickery's now exiting the pits, so as much as Vieira, Sanchez, Odo, and Richard are settling into a groove, they're going to have to deal with someone else. They're also going to have to deal with Krasik, who is about to exit the pits. Oh, I think... Did he just rejoin the race? I believe he did. Yeah, I briefly saw that he was on pit exit. I think he's still in the pits. Actually, yeah, good sportsmanship there from Charles Krasik, deciding not to get in the way of the field, rapidly approaching onto him. And as Harmon goes side by side with Fernandez right towards the tail end of the top 8. Nice drift from Eric Harmon, keeping it going in a straight line. His tires have been turned into rectangles as a result of that lockup to keep it going in a straight line, but well held from Harmon. That was mega sideways. Oh, as you can see, Vickery getting involved in that front pack fight. Thankfully, all the drivers running at the north end of the field getting away with that first encounter with lap traffic fairly smooth, but what a save from Harmon.
Yeah, it was a great save. Looks like he just got over into the grass on the outside, the corner of Graham Hill Bend, and just you take that corner, the exit wide anyway. Maybe he just went a little wider than he wanted to. Had to catch the rear end of the car, but great job to catch it. Can continue on, if I can get that word out. And so he'll continue his battle with Unger, who's right behind him by about a second and a half. And up at the front, I do see the top 3 are now starting to stretch that gap over Ryland Richard. So Richard hung on as long as he could, and now these guys in the front are starting to stretch it and get away.
Not sure if that was a mound of dust or what. I guess it must have been some tire smoke, as you can see a car off there. I believe that may have been Charles Krasik that was on the inside line as the leaders went through turn number 3. Saw a big puff of smoke, so I'm not sure whether that was like a mote of dust, tire smoke, There's some weird cloud formations forming over Brands Hatch at the moment in iRacing, but I believe that may have been some tire smoke with a spin that Krasik may have had coming out of turn number 2. David Unger, who we're following at the moment, running down in 9th, really the last of the drivers that are within striking distance of just about anybody, with Pires down in 10th, currently 22 seconds off of our race leader, Lucas Vieira. Ooh, you can see that's a big bit of drama. Who was that? That, I believe, that is Krasik. Yeah, a whole lot of damage. Completely missing rear wing. That's probably going to end up for sale on eBay by the end of this race. But Krasik running into some trouble. That must have been a pretty significant whack, too. That, I believe, he may have lost it heading through turn number 6. I'm curious if we'd be able to find a replay to see exactly what in the world has happened to Charles Krasik. Had a spin, we thought, coming through turn number 2, and I think may have had another moment heading through 6.
Yep, just everything good there. Oh, no.
Ooh.
It's a 617 car. That's Eric Harmon. It just was trying to make the pass. I think Krasik got off in the grass, had to kind of check up a little bit, and Harmon did his best to try and avoid. Just clipped him. As we see now, he's around, so he may have damage as well.
Ooh, yeah, you can see tough stuff from Harmon. We're mentioning how he's had an up and down season. However, that inconsistency seeming to continue here at Brands Hatch this evening. That's going to relegate him down the running order, and he's already gone back to pit lane. I believe he may have just entirely disconnected from the session. Yes, he has. Can't really blame him, though, after how things have gone for him in this Radical Americas race. Only the third to last round of this season that started all the way back in February. Hey, time flies when you're having fun. Harmon definitely wasn't having fun, though, as that's the reason why he has disconnected. That contact he had with Krasik, that I'm not really sure how to judge that, Charles, because Krasik was very slow, somewhat close to the racing groove, but Harmon didn't really do too much to try and avoid that contact, at least from what I saw taking a look at the replay angle that we had.
Yeah, it was a little tough for that head-on angle to kind of get a feel for what the cars were doing. So we see Benelid looks like he had a little off-track excursion as well. We're going to get a replay up real quick, coming through turn 1 and down off the hill. Looks like everything's going well coming into Druids, and just locks the tires up and off in the gravel. Manages to miss the barrier and can continue on.
I think he is very happy about the reworked gravel physics in iRacing, because I think if those weren't there and the gravel traps in iRacing didn't resemble quicksand more than anything else, I think he would have been in a big spot of bother. But thankfully for him, he keeps it out of the barriers, albeit he's now running outside the top 5. With the AM leader, this man, Andy Vogel, slipping in front in the number 34 car. He has been incredibly impressive thus far, and I believe with the current form that he's had at the moment, he may have a very good shot to actually seal up the championship in 3 weeks' time at Spa for the second to last race meeting of this Radical Americas Championship here in 2024. And if you want to catch that action, it is going to be on September the 29th here on Apex Racing TV. But Andy Vogel running at the front of the AM category, a driver also running in the AM category, and starting to battle for that final AM podium spot is our Apex Racing TV colleague driving for Flying Line Racing, J.R. Gregory, sweeping around the outside, heading through the final corner. He's going to slip his way up into 9th overall and P3 in the AM category. JR, I believe, has done something that actually, I think we've both done this in reference to Radical SR10s, because for the opening race of the season, all the way back in February, as Pyra is going to try and go for the move down the inside into turn number 2 to retake that spot. Looks like he'll be able to hold off, at least for now. They're still going to be side-by-side into turn number 3, but Pyrez still holding on to that spot. But getting back to the point that I was going to mention, J.R. Gregory started the season in the commentary booth here on Apex Racing TV, and towards the end of the season, he swapped out the driver's steering wheel out for a microphone. Oh, actually, no, he's done it the other way around. He swapped out the commentator's microphone for a driver's steering wheel. I'm all over the replays here on this broadcast tonight. But anyways, J.R. Gregory, I think I also did the same, albeit the other way around, a couple of seasons ago with the Radical Official Series. Started the season commentating it, then ended up running in one of the official races. I didn't finish last, and I didn't crash. I think I ended up 12th when everything was said and done, which overall is solid. Speaking of the driver running in 12th, Krasik still having some moments here and there with that heavily damaged Radical SR10. Meanwhile, Lucas Vieira still leading at 1.3 seconds between himself and Sanchez running in P2. Vieira, at this point, he is starting to settle into the groove and maybe trying to drive off into the sunset, and not just this race, but also the Pro Championship as well.
Yeah, and we see JR coming in. I don't know if this is his scheduled pit stop for the race. I think he did this the last race as well. A little early pit stop, come in, just get some clear air. Like he was having a fun battle. Maybe not as fun as he thought it was going to be with Luis Perez. So JR's in. He's made his stop. He's back out on the track. And I was going to bring up a point is we kind of gave iRacing a little bit of grief. When we had the ice grass and the gravel traps that actually made your car go faster. But I think with the changes to the off-track friction models, I think they've hit the nail on the head. I mean, the gravel is there is to arrest your speed. So yeah, it is like hitting quicksand, but that's by design. It's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to keep you from not, lawn darting yourself into the barrier. So in that aspect, well done to iRacing.
Yeah, I gotta say I'm with you there, Charles. Credit where credit's due to iRacing. They have worked miracles, of course, adding in rain a couple seasons ago, adding in the reworked gravel physics. And what they've done with the SR10, I remember when I first joined Apex Racing TV, the SR10 was... There's some bad sort of work done to the SR10 that made it drive like a 60s Formula 1 car at times. Actually, at times it drove more like a 30s F1 car if anyone ever drove an Auto Union mod, probably for Assetto Corsa or something like that. That's kind of how this car felt a year and a half ago, but iRacing has worked their magic to turn this car into the track missile that it is. And around certain racetracks, these cars can be faster than GT3s. They are blisteringly quick with 40 EcoBoost engines in the back of them. But iRacing working very, very well. I gotta say, the one thing that I may mourn in terms of the reworked off-track and grass and gravel physics is, of course, the Bathurst jump. It'd be nice if we could have that, but, beggars can't be choosers, I guess, so that's neither here nor there. Let's get back to the racing action and talk about Ben Lid and Vocal going side by side, with Ben Lid finally getting that move done to slip his way back up into the final top 5 spots. Vocal still putting on a very hard challenge. Now, however, he does have a car between himself and Fernandez running second in the M category. Actually, he will now, as Ben Lid spins coming off of turn number 2, and he goes off the track in dramatic fashion, knocks the rear wing off that SR10. That is going to turn that thing from a finely tuned missile on the racetrack to a hoopty rod on 4 wheels. Ben Lid with a simple mistake coming out of turn number 2, and he's going to go off the track yet again through 4. He will probably have to come back to pit lane at the end of this lap. It looked like a simple mistake. I couldn't even register it at first because it was so minor to kick things off, but Ben Lid with a small mistake coming out of turn number 2, proving that snowball theory that we posited earlier on the air here on Apex Racing TV tonight, and proving that small little mistake can turn into a big and dramatic moment.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, I called it obviously as we were watching him come through, and it's kind of like he just caught the outside curb and just maybe too much throttle. The rear tires just couldn't cope, and around he went and into the barrier. Obviously, that backing into the barrier, losing the rear wing, is going to make life a little difficult. He can come into the pits and get that fixed, as we saw with him taking another off track, I think through Surtees. So as we see Perez with a little, looks like they had a little rejoin here. So we'll see if we get the same thing from Perez coming through down and Grab Hill Bend. Yep, just inside curb, just unsettles the car. You try to get back on the throttle, and there's not enough grip in the rear, even with the wing downforce, to keep the car going in a straight line.
Lots of drivers having mistakes thus far. Did Lucas Vieira just have one? We're taking a look at a replay of him Coming out of turn number 3, ran wide a little bit. I think he got away with that fairly clean. Won't want to have 2 moments like that because he doesn't want to pick up some sort of iRacing incident point violation penalty or pick up a slowdown, which will definitely eat away at that gap between himself and Franco Sanchez, who's still running in P2. Ryan Odo still running in the final podium position at the moment. And this is definitely not ideal for Odo. I mean, a podium is still a podium. He'll certainly not rule it out, and considering that the kid is younger than me based off the chats that we've had with him at the end of these broadcasts, Odo is viciously quick. I think he is going to be a driver that we need to keep our eyes on in the near future in iRacing, because just based off the speed he shows in these challenging to drive and very difficult to manage Radical SR10s, the fact he's shown a whole lot of speed in these race cars really speaks volumes about the kind of driver that Ryan Odo is and the type of driver that Ryan Odo is going to be as his iRacing career continues to develop. But still, a P3 result for him is probably not what he had in mind. He said towards the end of that Phillip Island broadcast that he needs to go out for all-out glory, go out for wins, because Vieira is fast. Vieira is a driver that he's contending for in that championship, and as it stands currently, that gap would be fixing to increase with Odo finishing the races in P2 and P3. Actually, I don't even know why I said that. We're only 15, coming up to 16 minutes in to this 45-minute race. He could end up winning it for all we know. We just never know in these Radical Americas races.
No, it only takes one penalty by one of the top 2 coming into the pits, maybe speeding, or just not putting as much emphasis on the pit entry, and maybe just taking it easy coming through there. And it's real easy to just say, you know what, I'm not going to push it. I'm going to just kind of hold back and just ease my way in, ease my way out, and the next thing you know, you've lost 3 seconds to the cars behind. So you have to be very careful that you have to give the pit entry. You have to just push it as hard as you can, because that's what your competitors are going to be doing. So as we see Vocal here running P5 overall, still leading the AM class. It's got a nice 3-second gap over Fernandez in P6.
And the field's starting to spread out a lot throughout this field. I believe the closest gap that we have up and down the 9 cars that are left on the lead lap coming up to 17 minutes into this 45-minute race is a gap between Sanchez and Odo, which isn't very, very close. However, it isn't too far either. Sanchez remaining in P2, Odo remaining in 3rd. The movers and shakers thus far in this race. Sanchez up 1 spot, Odo down 1. Currently, the hard charger is actually tied between 4 drivers, with Adrian Fernandez, David Unger, J.R. Gregory, and Luis Pires all making up 2 spots thus far in this race. And we're just over the 3rd mark now. A whole lot of time left for these drivers to try and start to battle, as Luis Pires has come down pit lane from the 10th position. He's currently 1 lap down, so this is not going to be majorly consequential, as I think he went down the wrong pit box for a very brief second there, but nevertheless, Pires stopped in his box now. We'll see how he exits out compared to the race leaders, because I think they're all very lucky to get away with that first run through lap traffic as smoothly as they did. I'm curious if we'll see this race possibly be decided as a result of some poor luck heading through traffic.
I mean, it would not surprise me, because that seems to be that's what's happened a lot with the pit strategy. You know, obviously it worked out for Vieira. Obviously, as you mentioned, at Phillip Island, just had a lap 1 incident, came in and was able to just nurse the car around for the rest of the race. So yeah, I mean, you know, the pit strategy is always important. And of course, lap traffic, just getting clear of the traffic and making sure that you've got a good clean entry and a good clean exit, and then you can run some hot laps without having to worry about trying to overtake cars that haven't yet pitted. We are on board here. We're back to David Unger running in P7. Nice. I mean, he's basically running on his own. He's about 9 seconds behind Fernandez and about 27 seconds ahead of Benelid, who's already pitted. So when Unger comes in, that'll be probably he'll come out somewhere between Bindlin and Gregory, I would assume, unless something strange happens. As we're on board, it's like he's just having a nice run. It doesn't look like there's anything. Looks like he's just trying to check timing and scoring, kind of get a feel for how many off tracks he's had. Looks like he's kept the car under control. He was struggling with it there in the first race, with the sprint race, just kind of struggling with the control of the car. But it seems like he's got that under control now, and he's just putting out some good laps.
Yeah, I mean, to finish first you have to finish, and to try and finish these races, you just have to keep it clean. And JR, no stranger to the Radicals. He's been on the Radical official broadcast now since, I think, season 3. Or season 3 of 2023. I've had the pleasure of commentating a whole bunch of Radical official races with him, so he is no stranger to these race cars. Lucas Vieira isn't either, as he is still leading this race a second and a half in front of Franco Sanchez. He was about a second and a half in front of Ryan Odo in third. This field spreading out quite a lot, so really no battles on track currently. Curious if we could possibly ride on board with Lucas Vieira and just savor the sights and sounds of Vieira driving his way around this fantastic racetrack, a beautiful looking racetrack as well. I gotta say, it's always good to return to an old school track with some trees to either side, some old buildings a little bit farther in the back, maybe a rickety shack which used to be a timing and scoring area. It's a lot better, at least it's a lot better, so to speak, but in my view, it's definitely a lot more characterful than modern racetracks where you're just surrounded by skyscrapers and everything like that. So really, a racetrack like this just has so much unique flair and character, and a track that's only been changed, I think, once, with one major layout change going between turns 3 and 4, where they shifted that area around a little bit to the configuration that we have now. But Brands Hatch just has so much character to it. You always gotta love seeing races around this track, just with the ambiance that the place has.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Just I'm a big fan of Brands Hatch, as I said earlier in the broadcast. It is an old school track, right? I kind of equate it to, like I said, like a Road Atlanta. I think this is a much faster track than Road Atlanta is. Obviously, Road Atlanta is kind of dominated by that one long back straight, where cars are just basically at the pit limiter for half of that straightaway. There's some good medium length straightaways on this track, and the cornering is just amazing. How very precise you have to be, corner in and corner out, all the way around the circuit, and it just makes it's one of the most challenging tracks you're going to race. Obviously, the elevation changes, and as you said, grass and trees, and gravel traps. It's very much an old school track.
What's interesting about Brands Hatch is mainly just the history surrounding the event. So I don't usually bring this up on Apex Racing TV, mainly because I went into this broadcasting stuff saying I'm not going to use this as a means of self-promotion. But really, I got into this racing media stuff, running a YouTube channel talking about the history of IndyCar racing and all that stuff, mainly because I just love IndyCar. It's my favorite form of auto racing at the moment, albeit the people who run the series usually tend to step on their own toes basically every single week. But nevertheless, I remember making a video back in 2022. It was an April Fool's video in which I was talking about a fake and completely fictitious driver by the name of Thor Buttocks was the name of the driver. And I said in that video that they were like racing in an IndyCar race at Brands Hatch back in 1978. And someone said that they knew it was an April Fool's video because of that part. What they didn't realize is that actually happened. There was a USAC IndyCar race at this very racetrack all the way back in 1978, and they didn't return there until 2003. What's very odd about that as well is there's actually 3 races, no, my apologies, there's actually 2 races in the UK during the 1978 season. There was one at Brands Hatch, which I believe when everything was said and done, oh god, this is putting me on the spot here because I made a video about this race way back in 2022. I'm trying to think of who won it. I think it may have been Rick Mears when everything was said and done. I know Danny Ungaius absolutely dominated it, but when everything was said and done, he had a gearbox issue which knocked him out after leading the first, I believe, 78 laps, fairly uncontested. But that race actually happened. Another race that happened during that same 1978 season was a race at Silverstone. And there's very little media surrounding that. There is a broadcast-ish sort of version of the race at Brands Hatch. I believe it's probably about 15 minutes long, and I think Ken Squire was actually on the call, the very historic NASCAR commentator who unfortunately passed away earlier on this year. He was on the call for that broadcast on CBS, and there's some stuff surrounding that, but when it came to the IndyCar race at Silverstone from that very same year, there's just nothing. There's no surviving broadcast tapes or anything like it. It's very odd to see a race just pretty much completely disappear off the map. And honestly, I have a whole lot of racing lost media stories where that comes from. While we're on the subject of it, Charles, are there any racing lost media stories that you're really intrigued by?
Yeah, no, not necessarily. But you did mention the when you were talking about the '78 IndyCar race at Brands Hatch. It kind of harkened back to my teenage years because I'm an old guy. The mid '80s, where NASCAR decided they wanted to go run Fuji, which they had to kind of cut the track down a little bit because they couldn't get the gearing just quite right for that long straightaway down into 130R. So they had to kind of reconfigure the track a little bit to suit the NASCARs, but they did that for a couple of seasons. Of course, you could find the video on YouTube. You could pretty much find every video on YouTube, except for the one you're talking about, apparently, with the Silverstone and IndyCar. But yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking about was NASCAR at Fuji and how just some things, they tried it and it's like, you know what, it's probably not a good idea. Let's not do this again.
I mean, going way back into the Wayback Machine, Fuji was originally designed to be a oval track, and I think one of the first races that they had, one of the strangest races too, was a one-off. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I'm sitting there talking about 130R, which is not Fuji, it's Suzuka. So they were racing at Suzuka. I think they actually did try and race at Fuji as well, but I think the one I was thinking about was Suzuka. Before people just jump all over me, I'll self-correct on that one.
I do recall that for sure. I remember there being some pretty interesting moments to happen from all of that. I think NASCAR even reworked their graphics package just a little bit for the broadcast of those races. But Fuji was always an interesting track, and I forget the year. I believe it may have been 1966. If I remember correctly, Jackie Stewart won a one-off IndyCar race at Fuji Speedway on the road course, which they for some reason ran in the opposite direction for that race. It was very strange, and I couldn't find any rhyme or reason as to why they ran the track backwards, but nevertheless, Jackie Stewart grabbed his lone IndyCar victory at Fuji Speedway all the way back in the 60s. I think it may have been a non-championship race as well, so I'm not entirely sure if it counts. And also, speaking of Jackie Stewart, as we just saw David Unger come down pit lane from the 8th position. This is a odd stat that I always found interesting. Oh, Sanchez coming down pit lane. Sarah talks about random racing history being disrupted a little bit by Franco Sanchez, a P2 runner in this race, coming down pit lane for the one and only stop. We'll be careful to see if he hits his marks, didn't overshoot his box at all. Well done from Franco Sanchez. That car's not going up on jacks either. We've seen some drivers make that mistake thus far this season. Drivers coming into the pits and taking fuel, but they also end up taking tires, and it just completely wrecks their race with a whole lot of time that they really didn't need spent down pit lane. Adrian Fernandez running second in the AM category, and as we are talking about IndyCar racing, no, it is not the former IndyCar driver Adrian Fernandez in that car. Adrian Fernandez is a different person than the Adrian Fernandez we have running in this series. I think is the most time the name Adrian Fernandez has been mentioned over a 15-minute span, but nevertheless, Lucas Vieira now running what has to feel like all by his lonesome with Ryan Odo 4 seconds back and I'm not even sure who the next closest car is to him, well farther down the road, with the entire gap between turns 8 and 9 being the next car farther up the road. 29 minutes on the clock at the moment, and Vieira is going to stay out yet again. So an interesting call from Vieira to stay out on the racetrack. Same with Odo as well. So Ryan, Odo, and Vieira somewhat in step when it comes to this strategy call. Looks like Ryland Richards going to stay out, getting very close to the grass on the outside, going on to the start-fast, not so straight away. So Sanchez coming in for an interesting call to come down pit lane. What do you make of that, Charles?
Well, you know, obviously everybody has their own strategies that they're going to put in. I think it's kind of interesting that he came in, Vocal still out on the track. He's about 2.7 seconds behind him. So unless Vocal comes in the next lap or so, then he's going to have to deal with that lap traffic. That may slow him down. That may be a detriment to his strategy if he has to kind of wait up on Vocal a little bit. I mean, Vocal's running 120 dead, but all the guys up front were running in the mid to high 119s. As a matter of fact, Vieira's last lap was a 119.2. So he definitely, it feels like he's going to catch Vocal unless Vocal comes in and pits, like I said, in the next lap or so. Then he's going to have to just see if that may bite him. It may give Odo a chance to make up that gap. Oh no!
So that is Andy
that?
Vocal. My lord, that was a whole lot of drama going on in the past few moments. I'm not entirely sure. Vieira's come down pit lane. Odo has stayed out yet again, and here is the replay of what just happened. We believe it may be Luis Pires in the 963 car, heading his way through turn number 6. That's contact with lap traffic. That sends Pires around with a sickening collision into the outside wall with some contact. Was that Adrian Fernandez or was that Andy Vocal that he made contact with? We're following Franco Sanchez's perspective in all of this. He came a couple of feet away from pile driving into the side of Pires' car. Of course, went off the track, understandably so, on the outskirts of turn 7. But considering the shallow line he had to take as a result, can't really blame him too much. Andy Vocal has come down pit lane. I'm curious whether it was him or Fernandez that was the one giving the punt to Pires heading through turn number 6.
Yeah,
but either way, those drivers still running P1 and P2.
Yeah, maybe we can get another replay
right
of that. We can identify the car by the number, and we can ascertain who the culprit was there as we're seeing that. It's Pires, and I believe that is Vocal in the 34 car.
Yes, it is the 34 car of Andy Vocal. Yep. You can see him flashing the headlights. That was a pure miscommunication, if I'm being completely honest. That was a little bit on Pires. He should have probably tried to remain predictable as a result of that lap traffic coming up to him. Ryan Odo has come down pit lane along with Ryland Richard. Vieira is going to be able to retake the lead of the race, though, and actually going to extend that gap with Sanchez now 1.8 seconds in tow, and Odo a little bit closer to Sanchez than he was before the pit cycle. However, not terribly close, with about 13 minutes left to go in this race. Ryland Richard going to be exiting the pits yet again in 4th, and with most of the field with their pit stops taken care of, I believe, in fact, I'm going to fact check myself on all of this, the whole field has now come down pit lane for their pit stops. So with the pit stops taken care of, the drivers at this point in time are probably just waiting to whittle away the laps and bring this race to a conclusion. We're following Ryan Odo still behind Franco Sanchez. These two cars covered by about 0.3 of a second. And this may start to heat up soon. I think Odo, we've mentioned so far on this broadcast, and we'll mention it one more time. Odo, he wanted to come into these final few races and grab some checkered flags. I don't think he'll be able to contend with Vieira. However, he'll certainly be able to contend with Sanchez.
Absolutely, and there's lap traffic in front, so they're going to have to both navigate by J.R. Gregory. As we see Gregory just kind of move off to the side. I think that's what Pires was trying to do earlier, and I think that it just was a little bit too late to try and get out of the way. As we see Odo dive to the inside turn 1, side by side.
Ooh, that was a last-minute dive, it must be said, from Odo, and as Sanchez goes off the track heading out of turn number 1, that was a slick maneuver from Ryan Odo to slip his way up into P2. I think we have to take a look at a replay of that in the not-too-distant future. For now, though, I think Sanchez may be eyeing up a way to get past Ryan Odo in the not-too-distant future. The car is separated by about 0.3 of a second coming out of turn number 4. Will he have a run heading their way into 5? Will Odo be able to hold on to that spot? Or is Sanchez going to get back past? He's got that inside line heading into 5. Odo's going to stick it on the outside and slide his way through the corner, making wall contact and going into the barrier. Odo not picking up a whole lot of damage as a result of that incident, more so a bruised ego than anything else. He had a big drift heading through 3, and it just became too much to control. Odo, he was trying to go for all-out glory, but in doing so, he ruins his chances of a P2 result. And here's a replay. Sanchez goes for the move. Odo tries to stick it around the outside. It was actually a little bit of netcode contact in all of that, and Ryan Odo was a couple of feet closer into the racing groove to get away with that incident with only some dirty tires. He's now coming down pit lane, possibly to repair some damage. Is this actually repairing some damage, or is he going to be serving a drive-through penalty, possibly for an incident point violation? Ryan Odo, that is going to be a game changer when it comes to the championship fight, mainly as his main arch rival in points, Lucas Vieira, is on track for a dominant double at Brands Hatch, but that was so unfortunate for Odo, and it's now dropped him down to 4th with Ryland Richard inheriting that final podium spot.
Yeah, it's tough because they were racing. You know, Odo was, as you said, maybe a little late, but I think the door was open for him to take that move to the inside of turn 1. They managed to get through there with no contact, yet Sanchez went a little wide coming out of the corner. And kind of lost the position, but then went in and tried to make that comeback and tried to make the pass going in through, I think, turn 5. And just, you know, just not enough room there. I think, as you said, maybe some netcode contact sent Odo off, and then the contact with the barrier. Very unfortunate, because even had he stayed out without having to serve the drive-through, it was still, he lost 7 seconds, and with maybe some aero damage on the car, it was no way he was going to make that time up before the end of the race. So very unfortunate that it came to that. As we see, Odo looks like he's lost another position, so he's still maybe struggling with the car. He's down to 5th now. Yep, that car looks like it may be crabbing just a little bit.
Yeah, I think he came in and maybe it was just a penalty that he had to serve. You can see that car very slow heading into the final corner of turn 9. Maybe a spin. Yes, yeah. It was a spin from Ryan Odo, the second in the span of just as many laps. And he had to pull off a 3-point turn as well to avoid going down pit lane once again. And the driver that overtook him was Andy Vocal, who's on track to take a victory in the AM category. Meanwhile, his rival in the AM class, that being Adrian Fernandez, he's running down in 6th and is going to have a battle on his hands between now and the end of this race between himself and John Benlid. He repaired the damage on that race car, and he is trying to find any sort of spot that he can. This is probably going to be the one move that he can pull up between now and the end of this race and contact yet again. Both of them keep it going in a straight line. Well held from Adrian Fernandez to keep that car going in a straight line. He was mega sideways, and that was definitely a little bit of contact, getting deja vu after that moment involving Odo and Sanchez just a couple of laps ago. But Adrian Fernandez with a beautiful save with yet another incident heading through 5.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was very similar to the last one we saw between Sanchez and Odo. And I think that Bentley did a good job to just check his car up and hold up and allow Adrian to get himself caught back up and get the car back under control. Did not try and make a pass to take advantage of it. So nice gentlemanly racing from Bentley there. And so they'll continue on, and he'll try and make that move again if he thinks he's faster.
I mean, you never know. These drivers have some resilience. That's the one thing when it comes to racing drivers. It takes one to know one. I remember driving an event well back when I was 13 with broken ribs just because I had a good shot of locking up the championship a few races before the end of the season. Was that stupid? Yes. Would 19-year-old me do that? Hell no. But, you know, drivers sometimes get caught up in the red mist, and maybe even after an unsuccessful attempt at the overtake the first time by, we could see these two drivers trade blows between now and the end of this race, which is coming up in about 6 minutes' time. And I know it's a few minutes, it's been a little while since I mentioned this and we talked about some of the history stuff. I went back and fact-checked myself when it came to this sort of stuff that I mentioned. It was 1966 in which Jackie Stewart won his only ever IndyCar race at Fuji Speedway, running in a very strange reverse configuration, and it was Rick Mears that ended up winning that IndyCar race at Brands Hatch all the way back in 1978. Funnily enough, it took them until 2003 for them to return with Rockingham Speedway, which is actually, I believe, on the other side of town from the Apex Racing TV studios, playing host to two IndyCar races back in 2001 and 2002. And that race in 2003 ended up being the first career victory for a driver who Champ Car fans would come to learn in the following few years. That being a young driver from Europe who had been pretty strong in the Formula 3000 championship the season before. He joined Newman Haas and picked up sponsorship from McDonald's, and then he just flipped the field like they were flipping burgers, and that, of course, was Sebastian Bourdais, who after 2003 went on to win 4 straight Champ Car championships in 2004, 2005, 2006, and 2007 before the reunification in 2008, and then he moved off to Formula 1 to be partnered up with Sebastian Vettel. Those two were teammates and actually both started at the front of that 2008 Italian Grand Prix, in which Vettel, driving a Toro Rosso, was able to take the first victory of his long and illustrious career, and also take the first ever victory for a Red Bull badged car. Unless Sauber won some race back in the... Actually, no, Sauber didn't win a race until Robert Kubica in Canada, also in 2008 for that matter. I know, going back to the motorsports history discussion here for a few moments, Charles, this is probably the most cursed image in the history of Formula 1. It was the old Sauber cars back when they had Petronas and Red Bull sponsorship and had a Ferrari engine in the back of them. You ever see those cars?
I don't think so. I think that might have been before I started really getting involved in Formula 1. So I'd say probably not.
Let me actually go through. This is breaking the fourth wall here on Apex Racing TV tonight, as a fight between Ben Lid and Fernandez is more so of a parade with the headlights coming on with both of these race cars. And the end of the race is starting to near. Only a few more laps to go for Lucas Vieira to pull off the double and stake his claim. And at this point, based off of how poor of a showing Odo has in this race, looking like he's going to finish down in 5th, this may be Vieira wrapping one hand on that championship trophy from the 2024 Radical Americas Championship. So we're just looking to see if these two drivers may start to battle in a couple of moments' time. I certainly wouldn't rule it out at this point. This season has been dramatic at times. It's been slow at others, but Ben Lid, he is still feeling racy and probably a little bit upset with Fernandez, considering the contact they had heading into turn number 5 not very long ago. So as we look at this fight, and as I send a photo in the small little commentators and producers chat that we have, Charles, that's a photo of the old Sauber race cars. I believe Felipe Massa and Kimi Räikkönen both drove those race cars, which adds a little bit odd to them, considering they both won races. Räikkönen won a championship, and Massa nearly won a championship behind the wheel of a Ferrari in 2007 and 2008, respectively. But Ben Lid's still running behind Fernandez. Ooh, running wide, heading through turn number 8, nearly into the grass, coming out of the corner. These drivers feeling the burn, they're feeling the pressure, and they're feeling the season come to a close. Fernandez also running off the track, coming out of turn number 6. These drivers start to force the issue a little bit. Well, with less than 2 minutes on the clock, I believe next time by, Lucas Vieira is going to be victorious from this season. And what a way to begin the final trifecta of races for Vieira, to take a dominating victory over Sanchez, who I believe has had some sort of off-track moment as that gap is ballooning between himself and Vieira. That gap is still increasing, so I think Sanchez has had some sort of moment in the past few seconds for that gap to just increase and increase and increase. That or Vieira is just turning on the nitrous towards the end of this race. And right as we look away, Benlid and Fernandez finally start to trade positions. I mean, that's how it usually works in the world of racing.
Yeah,
but I think Sanchez... Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, I think Benlid may have been more frustrated with the fact they couldn't get by Fernandez. Fernandez did a really good job of being defensive. And I'm wondering if Sanchez may be running out of fuel. He was about 2 seconds quicker during his pit stop than the other guys up front. So I'm wondering if he may be under fuel, just trying to see if he can get close to Vieira. As we see Fernandez, oh, there we go, just loops it around in Druids. And, you know, a little bump as Benley went by, but I don't think that's anything that's going to damage the cars too bad. So I'm wondering now if Sanchez is just trying to get it home without running out.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to bring up. I think Sanchez is running on fumes. He's probably running on prayers at this point. The pace of that number 88 car has plummeted in the past few moments. Last time by, Lucas Vieira was at a 118.8. Meanwhile, Franco Sanchez was in the 128s. Benlid and Fernandez have come down pit lane, possibly to serve drive-through penalties with that contact they had. That's going to give David Unger P6. Well done for the Australian. But meanwhile, Lucas Vieira, the driver who we've had our eyes on all throughout this season, coming back from the brink of disaster a couple of weeks ago at Phillip Island, he pulls off the double tonight at Brands Hatch. Lucas Vieira wins it when everything is said and done. And Sanchez is going to complete this final lap of the race. The final lap of the race in which Lucas Vieira set the fastest lap of the race in the process at a 118.7. Franco Sanchez going to finish this race in P2 much quicker compared to the lap before, however, still ends up 17 seconds back and only a few seconds up the road compared to this man, Ryland Richard, who inherits the final podium spot as a result of the chicanery that happened a little bit farther up the road. Andy Vogel, meanwhile, is going to finish as the top running AM driver, and in doing so, setting himself up very, very well for the next race of the season at Spa to maybe even seal the deal in the AM Championship. Ryan Odo going to finish in 5th. A heartbreaker for the young American. That was not the result that he had in mind. That was not the result he wanted at all, but it's the result that he's going to get when everything is said and done from this 45-minute long feature race. David Unger going to finish this race in 6th, my apologies. Well done for the Australian. Ends up making his way up 3 spots and becoming the undisputed hard charger when everything was said and done. And oh, this is going to be a big one. Oh, that was possibly the worst hit we've seen so far this season from Benlid, spinning like a ballerina in the grass after he took the checkered flag. I'm in pain just looking at that incident, Charles. I don't know about you, but John Benlid, I mean, of all the times to wreck in a manner like that, I guess the time to do it was after the checkered flag. I'm not too sure.
I guess.
Anyways, here's the results from this. Sorry to step on your toes there, Charles. Here's the results from this feature. Hold on to that thought in just a couple of moments' time. Lucas Vieira ends up winning it. Sanchez going to finish behind in P2 with that gap ballooning towards the end of this race. Ryland Richard going to finish in 3rd. Andy Vogel in 4th. Ryan Odo in 5th. David Unger going to finish in 6th. John Benlid in P7 when everything was said and done. Adrian Fernandez going to be the 2nd highest running AM driver at the checkered flag, P8 overall. J.R. Gregory going to finish in 9th. Luis Pires in 10th. Charles Krasik in 11th. Eric Harmon in 12th. And Tyler Vickery in 13th, with Harmon and Vickery both disconnecting from the race after having some incidents earlier on. So those are the results. And Charles, what was the thought you're going to bring up possibly in reference to the Benlid incident?
I was just going to say that, you know, I'm sure to add insult to injury, Benlid was just frustrated, you know, because he was battling Fernandez very hard, but very cleanly. You know, Fernandez doing a good job defensively, just trying to keep Benlid behind him. But then, you know, to have that little bit of contact as Fernandez spun, which triggered both of them to have to come down for a drive-through when it was, I mean, it's probably just very, very subtle contact, just enough to trigger a 1X or something like that, but it was enough to make them have to come down, which cost them another spot to Unker. So, I'm sure that was just the icing on the frustration cake, as it were.
I like the way you put that, the anger frosting on the frustration cake from him.
Yeah,
That's not
exactly.
a cake that you want to eat at all, especially towards the end of this season. We got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area when everything is said and done. Charles, I'll let you have first dibs and possibly talk with our race winner, Lucas Vieira. Would you like to have a chat with him?
Yeah, let's bring Lucas Vieira in and we'll have a chat with him. So, Lucas, congratulations. Double win tonight. Looked like you had the field covered. Just looked like that car was on rails for you tonight.
Hey guys, good night. Yeah, it was, and I was really happy with my pace. I put some really good laps in the practice from this week. I was hoping for a good pace, and at the end, I think it just clicked. The track suits me, and I was really happy with my pace during the whole race, both races.
Well, I was going to ask for pointers because I never can't seem to get this track right. It doesn't matter what car I'm driving. So, but it seems like you said the track suits you, and I think that's exactly right because it's been a battle between you, Ryan, and Franco for the entire season, but tonight they just couldn't keep your pace up.
Yeah, I mean the second race I see that the Ryan has an issue with the starts. I think it was the new clutch thing that iRacing put on the last build, and I was a bit too scared to use the clutch right this evening, so I tried to avoid. I don't use the clutch. I just do normal start without the clutch, so I avoid any issues with the tires. We have also the warm up for the tires, the power weight lap, and I was not sure how the tires would behave on the first lap because they was warm up, so we're not sure what was gonna be, so I wouldn't try to use the clutch. So probably if Ryan has a good start, maybe we have some fight during the race. I'm not sure, maybe. But unfortunately for him, I was hoping for a good race between him and Franco.
Absolutely. So we'll let you give out your thanks and shout outs, and we'll let you go for tonight.
Oh, for you guys, as always, you guys put an amazing job for us, for an amazing show. And for my wife as well, and also for my brother who will be watching the Netherlands. And then I will give a shout out for him too.
All right, Lucas Vieira, congratulations, and we'll see you in the next race.
See you guys. Good night.
All right, good night.
And that was Lucas Vieira, who ends tonight the double victor at Brands Hatch. And we'll bring in our Apex Racing TV colleague, Mr. J.R. Gregory. Welcome here to the commentary booth. It's been about a week and a half since we last had a chat towards the end of the official season that wrapped up not terribly long ago. So welcome to the broadcast booth. Things went much better for you tonight than they did at Phillip Island when you went into low Earth orbit. So talk us through the racing that we just saw at Brands Hatch.
Oh my gosh. Hey, Ron, how's it going? And hello to you as well, Charles and Lee. It was fun. I think the field was a little bit small because we're getting toward the end of the season and in the summer and maybe there's less interest. So I think I managed to get a P3 out of all that. But Brands is super fun and it's really a pretty good showcase for these radicals. As you guys know, these things were designed, developed, and tested over in the UK, and they probably have a ton of practice laps in places like Brands Hatch and Olton and Donington, and they're really well suited to the sweeping corners and the elevation change and all the crazy kind of off-camber stuff because of all the mechanical grip they have. So it is an absolute joy to drive these things in places like Brands Hatch. So I had a really good time.
And I know you are a fan of the Radical SR10s. I feel like if you weren't, you probably wouldn't have been on the official broadcast for as long as you have here on Apex Racing TV. And speaking of, we are going to be kicking off the official season in about less than a week's time, 5 days in fact, and it's going to be at this very racetrack. So would you like to give the viewers tuning into this Radical America's broadcast tonight a little bit of a preview as to what to expect at Brands Hatch this upcoming week?
That is kind of interesting question, Ron. I think that what we have seen pretty consistently over the last several seasons is that the attendance has been steadily increasing. The Radical Sim Racing community has been working pretty hard to increase the interest, increase the quality of driving, and in their track selection and the promos that we do for them here in Apex. So, every season gets better, and Brands Hatch is a great track for these Radicals. It's week 1. People will be excited to get back out there. So, next Friday, I'm certainly expecting multiple splits, and I'm expecting that we're going to see, as we usually do, some of the best Radical Sim drivers in the world gritting up for that race on Friday, and it's going to be exciting. Not a lot of passing opportunities are on this track. You kind of have to hover and show your nose and try to increase the anxiety in the driver ahead of you and create mistakes. But I think it still should be an exciting race. These cars are absolute hoot around this track.
Well, there's going to be some world-class race cars, some world-class drivers, and some world-class tracks as well. Tracks like Alton Park, Spa, Zandvoort, the Nordschleife, the brand new circuit here in iRacing, that being Navarra, along with Portimao, Donington, Watkins Glen, VIR, Road America, Sebring, and Interlagos, for the 13 race calendar that we have for this upcoming iRacing season. Now, JR, I'm sure you're very much looking forward to that season, and also looking forward to the final 2 races of the season. Now, before we let you go and possibly have an adult beverage after that hard night of racing action, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Absolutely. I always give a shout out to you guys. I'm looking forward to watching the coverage later. It's certainly makes it fun to participate in racing, go back and watch the Super Pro coverage on Apex and hear y'all's comments and see parts of the race that we missed. And also thank my fellow drivers. This is a really great group. This is really one of the reasons that I got into it. I could tell that there was really skilled, respectful driving, and these guys are having a good time. And that's really what motivated me to join the group. So super fun stuff. And thanks to my coach. I've been getting some coaching on the side, Ron, and I don't want to name any names, but his initials are James Barry, and that's been very helpful as well. So a big thanks, big shout out to him. And nice talking to you guys. You guys have a great night.
Alrighty, sounds good, JR. We appreciate your honesty in terms of name dropping the coach. Excited to see you back on the Radical official broadcast this Friday. Excited to see you back out on the racetrack here from the Radical Americas Championship in about 3 weeks' time at Spa. Thanks for joining us, man.
All right, man. Take care.
And that was our Apex Racing TV buddy, J.R. Gregory. You can feel the chemistry flying off the shelves considering the amount of broadcasts him and I have done together. I got that quote from him saying, well, I will not name names. However, his initials are James. Very well done. Now, Charles, we got one more driver waiting in the interview waiting area, that being Rylan Richard. Been a little while since we had a chat with him, so would you like to have a chat with Rylan Richard?
Absolutely. Let's bring Rylan in and we'll have a chat. Rylan, this is Charles. Congratulations. So P4 in the first race didn't look like you were running well, but obviously not really matching the pace of the top 3. But you came out in race 2 and held with them for a while before they started kind of dropping you a little bit. But then bad luck for another driver becomes good fortune for you and ends up on the podium in the feature race. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it was really tough to keep it. I mean, just in general, the whole season, keeping up with Vieira, Odo, and Sanchez has been quite the task. But just consistency key for me, I think. Getting a lot cleaner and working on just driving cleaner has paid off, and trying to catch Harmon and Benelid in the championship. So we'll see what happens. Yeah,
I mean, pretty successful there. The Benelid and Harmon obviously had a very early exit. You got into some trouble with the lap car, and so you were several positions ahead of Benelid. So you've managed to claw some points back, and it's going to make that championship battle even tighter for the final 2 races.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I sure hope. We'll see what happens in a couple of weeks. I think the track changed from Sonoma. No.
It did, yep. So a change of the track from Sonoma to Spa. So they're going to take advantage of that new layout. new scan.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it, and appreciate what you guys do all the time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to let you go ahead and give your thanks and shout outs.
Yeah, thanks to all the family and friends watching and support me over the last couple of weeks with work and life. So thank you guys again, and hopefully we'll get to see you guys soon.
All right, Riley, congratulations. We'll see you next race.
Thanks, Charles. Cheers.
Yep.
And that was Rylan Richard, and that was the last chat that we have with a driver at the end of this broadcast. Charles, this season started all the way back in February, and it's coming to a close over this next month and a week. Of course, the next race on this calendar is going to be on September the 29th at Spa. They're going to round the season off just 2 weeks later at the Nordschleife, bringing the season to a close and possibly crowning some champions over the next 2 races from this series. Closing thoughts from the Evening of Racing Action and Racing History podcast at Brands Hatch today, and also your thoughts heading into Spa in 3 weeks' time.
So good racing tonight. Obviously, as we said, Vera just class of the field tonight. It's been a 3-car battle most of the season, but even tonight, Odo and Sanchez really didn't have anything for him. He just basically checked out from the start and managed his gap for the rest of the race. Some good on-track battles. Obviously, we talked about how hard it is to pass there. And we saw it with some battles between Sanchez and Odo, as well as Ben Lynn and Fernandez, how difficult it is to make some moves in certain corners. Spa, I've already, I thought we talked about this before the broadcast. I've already been out with my team. We've been on the new Spa scan. Most of my team is either drives prototypes or Porsche Cups. So all the prototype drivers were out and about, checking out the new layout. They all really, really liked it. They said the changes that are made there just makes it conducive to better racing, with the changes to No Name and Puan and other things. They did say that there's more tire wear, so that may be a factor in our feature race for the next round. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But they did say that there was a significant more amount of tire wear, at least on the prototypes, which I think the prototypes are very similar as far as how they use the tires. It takes them a while to get them warmed up. So you may see some very similar things that happen with these radicals. But when we get to that race, we'll find out for sure.
We are certainly going to find out what the new rescan done of Spa is going to do in these Radical SR10 races. And a friendly reminder, you can tune into all the action here on Apex Racing TV, whether it be from this series, the European Championship, also on the exact same day, or the Friday officials. We are the one-stop shop for Radical SR10 action on the iRacing platform. And I think with that being taken care of and the preview of Spa, I think that will just about do it for this broadcast, mainly because credit where credit's due to our producer, Lee. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning in the UK. You've been an absolute trooper, Lee. Thank you very much for working the dials. Our old buddy Josh Wilkie recently got married, so we want to congratulate him again. He's currently on his honeymoon at the moment, so congratulations go out to him. But I think before our producer falls asleep, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Lee Thompson being a trooper working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler for us tonight, for him tomorrow, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you all again wherever it is in the not too distant future.